there. Don't overuse comfort vendors. Those are, old Charlie from Oracle, he's been walking around the building. I'm not picking on Oracle. Oh, Charlie from, whatever three-letter acronym is rocking with it. We're going to use him, see what he's going to do. You need to open up the field, okay, and figure out which technology is right for you. It may be Oracle, it may be IBM, but you've got to figure out your requirements that go to your technology, not vice versa. Avoid VDA. As I mentioned earlier, vendor-driven architecture. Lo and behold, if you are talking to a particular vendor and they are driving your architecture, what do you think the end state's going to be? Do you think it's going to be their competition? Do you think it's going to be objective look at the technology, making sure that the technology is correct for your problem domain? It's going to be their stuff because that's what you're signing up for. And as a vendor, their job is to sell their technology. Their job, they're going to look out for you, and not saying it won't work, but it may not be the optimal technology for your particular problem domain. Business, requirements, analysis, technology. Now repeat. Okay, don't go back, technology, and then try to backfit it and figure out how it fits into your requirements. Do a POC. If you're jonesing to deal with technology, set up a lab, talk to the vendors, and have them come in and do a proof of concept. They love doing that. Okay, they usually have to pay for it, by the way. But they're going to show you what their technology works, and you can learn about the technology at that point of view. Don't select the technology. It's a strategic technology vendor for you until you determine, number one, your requirements and if it's the right fit. And now's the time to start setting up centers of excellence and labs and bring this stuff in and start playing with it. And the reality is, if they're a good vendor, they're going to look out for you. They're going to help you get along those lines, teach you about their technology, tell you where it works and where it doesn't work, and then ultimately you're able to prove it out and then show and demonstrate in a lab. And those are where people are most successful. If I see a lab where people have thought enough to build a lab, then they thought enough to do the requirements and everything else that required to build a good service-oriented architecture, or any architecture for that matter. Never be afraid to toss out technology. So you get 6 months in with a vendor, you already spent a lot of money, you're like, uh-oh, or what we usually say, uh-row, wrong guy. You need to throw him out. Okay, I understand it's going to be a political upheaval and you could lose your job and all the other stuff, but you're just going to dig yourself deeper and deeper into a hole if you use the wrong technology going forward. Not considering service design. If we're going to build a service-oriented architecture, we're going to externalize services from existing systems, which is behavior bound to data. Okay. We're also going to build new services from scratch. Typically, that's going to be a 10-90 mix. 10 new services, 90 existing services. But still, we have to deal with service design. Services are not applications. They're not APIs. Services are services and should be designed properly. And this could be a whole one-day presentation on how to design services. There's not a lot of time and attention that's going on in the service-oriented architecture world. And what a service is, how you define it, how you design it, how you implement it, test it, develop it, build it, all the things that go into service orientation. We have a tendency to miss this mark in a huge way. So lots of good books on the topic, but ultimately this is a matter of something you need to learn on your own, and it's very dependent on the technology you have as to how the services are designed. You got to consider granularity, consider repeatable design, and then also consider testing. I'm a big advocate for testing methodologies and using testing tools. Mindreef is here. There's ITKO. Lots of guys out there are willing to take your money, which, by the way, will come back to you in not deploying services that are going to lay eggs, which cause huge amounts of lost revenue. So figure out how to do a service decomposition, a proper service design, and how to implement services correctly based on the enabling technology that you've created. And I'll show you how that fits into the process later in the presentation. The other big mistake is not factoring in the business. Okay, you always do ROI analysis before you begin work on your SOA. There's use cases. Okay, there's a meta ROI thing, and you can read my articles on that where you do the value of reuse and the value of agility, yada, 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 big deal. Okay, we all get that. Okay, you have to look at each of your processes that you're doing. What can improve and how much money will I make if we improve those processes? Okay, we're doing that as a sell into the organization. Once we figure out those use cases and how much money we can save if we're able to do a proper architecture to solve those business issues, then we're able to turn that around and present that to the C-level folks so we can get the thing funded. Now, that's a double-edged sword because you get funded, but also they get a nice little report they get to put in their desk and revisit in a year to try to see how much money you've made them. So don't make promises you're unable to keep. Understand the core business processes and what needs to improve. Understand the core business drivers and be able to sell them within the organization. And make sure the business analysts are working with you on this. And that you have people within the organization or people within your project team who understand not only the technology but the business, are able to accommodate or basically explain what problems the business is trying to solve, and then make sure those folks have input. With me so far? We don't like business people as IT people. We don't want to include them typically. In small organizations, it seems to be easy because we have usually the relationships there because it's a very informal structure. But you get all these little political fiefdoms within these large Global 2000 companies, and within IT, we think we know the business very well. Number one, you may know the business better than anybody else in the organization because you've designed the processes around that. But if you don't include the business people in on your architecture, they're not going to support it. And you start rolling these things out and things are externalized to them, then you're going to find you have to resell it again. So you sell it, you sell it, you sell it, you include, you make sure they have input, and you'll find out that they bring in some good information, some good input into the processes. So you make the correct changes as you need to make the correct changes. Last one is not thinking long-term and strategic. This is the biggest one. That's why I saved this one for the last. SOA has a positive impact after years, not months. So if we're thinking about this as a small-scale tactical project, we're not able to bring it to a logical conclusion at some point in time, then don't bother. You're just going to waste money. You're going to service enable this little project, and you may have some reuse and some value, but if you're not able to take it to the next project, the next project, the next project, the next project, have a long-term strategic plan, know exactly what objectives you're trying to reach, what kind of business benefits you're going to produce, you shouldn't do it. How can you say that? No, we got to do SOA. I got to put it on my resume. That's just reality. So SOA is not a development project. It's a journey, and people who don't understand that shouldn't deal with it because it's architecture. We've been trying to solve this stuff for 20 years. So what? We named it SOA. It's architecture. We're still doing the same thing we've been trying for a long period of time.